I'm Jordan, and welcome to Theology Made Simple. In this series, we're discovering the supernatural view of the Bible. And in the opening teaching, we looked at the first of three spiritual rebellions. Today is about rebellion number 2, the rebellion in Genesis 6. We find in this passage that some of the heavenly beings, the sons of God, cross from the heavenly realm into our own. They take on human flesh, cohabitate with human women, and spawn what becomes the Nephilim. The story is referenced twice in the New Testament, 2 Peter and also Jude. In 2 Peter, we're told that God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, committed them to chains of gloomy darkness until judgment. He didn't spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah. And it's that last line that he preserved Noah, the angels Peter's referring to, are the sons of God from Genesis 6. Jude then furthers the idea, and he states the angels did not stay within their own position of authority, but they left their proper dwelling, and he has kept them in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Now, both of these biblical authors see Genesis 6 as the second spiritual rebellion, when the sons of God go into the daughters of man, and the Nephilim are born. Now, at this point, if you've stayed with me, you probably have a bunch of questions. And so I want to address some of the main ones. So who are the Nephilim? And how is it possible that Genesis 6 is telling us they were before the flood? But we're also going to find out that they show up in Numbers 13 long after the flood. Like, how is that possible? In fact, in Numbers 13, we're told, and so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report, saying the land through which we've gone to is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people we saw were of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. We find far after the flood that the people of God encounter the Nephilim, the descendants of the sons of God. Now, the primary issue we typically have for the Genesis 6 passage, in fact, most of you probably have thought this in the last few minutes, is that angels, or these sons of God, these divine beings, they can't have sex. And we'll often quote Matthew 22:30, where it says, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. However, there are a number of issues with this interpretation of that Matthew passage. The first is that Jesus is referencing the spiritual world in Matthew 22, the realm of the divine, where there is finality, eternity. There's no need for procreation because he's referring to heaven. He is not referring to the realm of earth, nor is he referring to the history of man. The context here is related to when God will make all things new and restore a true and better Eden. But there's also a second important detail. The text doesn't say angels cannot have sexual intercourse. It only says they don't. And yet there's something in us, and it was for me for a long time, that we balk at this idea. In fact, we kind of want to avoid the passage altogether. But think about this for a moment. What is really more wild, more dramatic? The fact that angels can take on human flesh and procreate? Or that Jesus is born in a virgin birth, becomes a man, has his divine and human nature brought together? That God learned to walk, talk, use the bathroom. I bet Mary had to tell him to put the seat down. We're also told that he was tempted in all the ways that we are. Which, how could that be possible if Jesus didn't also overcome and resist any sexual temptation? Now, that's far more wild than Genesis 6 telling us the sons of God spawned the Nephilim. So why do we then pretend that Genesis 6 isn't in the Bible? Why do we avoid it? Well, when it comes to the incarnation of Jesus, if we don't embrace that, we have no faith. There is no Christianity. But we tend to toss Genesis 6 to the side because it makes us uncomfortable. It doesn't conform to the way we want to understand Scripture. But if we want to see the Bible in the way that those who lived it saw it, we must embrace the rugged and scandalous reality of Genesis 6. In the passage, we don't see an explanation for what happens because it was understood that divine beings could embody human form. Genesis 18, we see Yahweh and two other divine beings. They meet with Abraham in human bodies. And don't miss this, because what do they end up doing? They eat a meal together. Well, who eats? Humans. Humans do. In Genesis 19, we find two angels. They physically grab Lot and they put him back in his house for safety. In Genesis 32, Jacob wrestles all night with an angel of the Lord. There's this physical tussle. It leaves him with a limp. And this spiritual being is often seen as Jesus taking human form. In Acts, angels open doors. They tap on disciples to wake them up, and they comfort Jesus after he experiences the temptation from Satan. And I would hope that their comfort was more than floating above him with a harp singing "Shout to the Lord." So how did the giants then survive the flood? Michael Heiser noted that there are two alternatives for explaining the presence of giants after the flood, who descended from the giant Nephilim. The first is that the flood of Genesis 6 through 8 was a regional but not global catastrophe. The second is that the same kind of behavior described in Genesis 6 happened again or continued to happen after the flood, producing other Nephilim from whom the giant clans descended. Now, the first view really conflicts with our biblical understanding of the flood. However, the key to the second view is found in the word when. The word when from Genesis 6:4 can also be translated as whenever, stating that there could be a repeat of what happened here. Now, this brings a whole new light to Israel. In Numbers 13, the Promised Land wasn't just about Israel's survival and Israel's thriving. It was also about God calling up his people, the people of Yahweh, to defeat the descendants of the wicked sons of God. Again, human rebellion and divine rebellion are weaved throughout the Bible. And here God is telling his people it is time to defeat our enemy. This is what's at stake in Numbers 13. The people of God being afraid of the giant clans was not simply about fear, it was a spiritual failure to eliminate God's enemies. A failure that led to wandering the desert outside the land of promise for 40 years. A lot more was at stake. Join me in our next teaching as we'll look at the third and final rebellion. Taking complicated ideas about God and making them simple.
There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them.